Well, hey guys, here I am having my last donuts and coffee with my beautiful wife Janice, and then back home for packing the bike and heading out. Okay, Wiretappers, I'm off to New Orleans. It's a little bit cold up here in Missouri this morning. It's about, I don't know, 45, 50 degrees. But as I head south and the sun's out, in an hour, hour and a half, I think we'll be good to go. We hope, but otherwise we'll freeze my ass off all morning. So I'm off. Next stop is Fayetteville. Have dinner with my granddaughter tonight and her husband, and then on to New Orleans the next day. Hasta luego. So guys, I stay at a Hampton Inn, get up, eat their nice breakfast, pack up, go to the bike, and find that some jerk has knocked it over, broke off the right mirror and the front brake lever. Go back in, check around. I ask them about Kawasaki dealers. I just go to the internet with my phone. I find one not too far away. Parts guy there, real helpful, friendly parts guy, does not, of course, have the parts I need to fix any of this. So he rigs up a handlebar mirror, as you can see, and I proceed on to the Gangster Museum in Hot Springs. Now, folks, downtown Hot Springs. Those are all spas over there. This is the Ohio Club. I put a couple stills up it. This is an old gambling club. You know, there was gambling going on in this place clear up when I was in the 60s. I had a friend of mine, an older guy who was a big gambler, and he's always saying, we're going to have to go down to Hot Springs. They've got real gambling down there. So on to the Gangster Museum.
Well, we're here in the Gangster Museum of America. I'm Robert Raines, Executive Director and founder of the museum, and we are in the Madden Gallery, named after Owen Vincent Madden, who came here. He came here actually in 1932 with Dutch Schultz. He liked it a lot. Actually met a girl when he was here. Had to go back to Sing Sing, New York, and serve for about almost a year for a parole violation. But eventually he got back down here and married that girl, the postmaster's daughter, and lived here for the rest of his life. But these are just some of his things. This is one of the switchboards that they used in the Ritter Hotel, which was right behind us on Exchange Street, I might add. Exchange Street was named that because the phone service came into the phone exchange behind the Gangster Museum, and they would pipe it into the Ritter Hotel, and the Ritter Hotel was the first line off of the exchange. And so with the use of about 50 switchboards, he could hook every club up here with the results, but only after he knew who won the race, or who won the sporting event. So he became kind of the architect of how everything worked here. The FBI said we had $100 million worth of gambling every year here, starting in the 50s. It started before that, but we were up to that level. And the thing about the gambling here was it was illegal. Interesting factoid about Hot Springs in Vegas. When I spoke out at the Mob Museum, I talked about this, but in 1931, Las Vegas had 5,000 people in it, and they were all there to build the Boulder Dam, which became the Hoover Dam, to get water between Rancho Deluxe and Cedar Gulch, and that became Las Vegas. The same year, they had 5,000 people. We had 20,500 people here and 60 casinos in 22 high-rise hotels. So this was New York and Houston and Kansas City that you'll know all about. This was their playground. The Delgado's brother, who was from Kansas City, they worked in the Southern Club down the street. But Madden owned the Stork Club and the Cotton Club. He owned the fashion industry. He owned Broadway. This is one of his menus. He sponsored the World's Fair back in 2029, I think it was. I mean, he was a major dude in New York City and became a major dude here. Some historians say that he had to move here because Roosevelt wanted him to be out of the state of New York when he got out of Sing Sing. I don't think that's the way it went down. Some people say the mob sent him here to control their interest, but they really had no interest. They had a restaurant here. They had Frank Costello on the Jack Tar Hotel here. But other than that, they really enjoyed coming down here to be pretty much normal. On my podcast, TGMOA After Dark on Apple, a lot of the guys that lived through this, FBI guys, lawyers, one other historian, Madden's last lieutenant is on my podcast. A lot of those guys enjoyed the racetrack, the golf course at the country club. They just enjoyed being here with the thermal baths, a lot of moonshine whiskey, 40 or 50 million a year in prostitution, and 100 million in gambling, even though it was all illegal. So Capone stayed here sometimes 6 weeks at a time, but he came by train. So, you know, we had the Pullman Hotel was in this very spot where the Gangster Museum is. And the Pullman had cars that would come to Malvern, Arkansas, about 20 miles east of here. And then they'd come over here on the short gauge railroad. And so that only ran like once every other day. So you were here for a while when you got here, unless you came by stagecoach or something like that. But Madden had a big input here. Madden had a horse race in 1934 with the mayor and a private businessman league horse race. That very same year, Oaklawn Racetrack reopened, and they've been the single largest taxpayer ever since then. And what they did was they came up with, they would take 10%, calling it the handle, and you and I were doing the gambling because gambling was illegal here. So once they had pari-mutuel wagering in their vocabulary, then everything was okay. And it's still going. But now gambling has passed here in Hot Springs and in Arkansas. So 3 years ago we finally passed the gambling amendment, and we have a major casino out there. I hope you get to visit it when you get out of here. But these are some of Madden's things from his estate. There's a champagne bottle from the 60s from the Southern Club, a New Year's Eve celebration. That finish line trophy was from the old grandstands of Oaklawn Park that he gave away. Mr. Sulla gave away 50 of them. There's one of our tour guides with Rocky Marciano, who Madden represented as a fight promoter in New York, along with Primo Carnera, Max Baer, and Primo and Max fought a couple of times, and some say one of them was fixed, but there was really no proof of that. There's a bottle of scotch there that comes from the House of Lords. Costello, Joe Kennedy, and Madden were in the House of Lords Scotch Company in King's Ransom. That bottle of scotch there is valued at about $4 grand. I would not be tempted to open it, but and these are just some of the other things that came out of some of his estate that people have either donated or loaned or sold to the museum. And it's just a fascinating history, but he became the architect of how things work here, where even though it was illegal, everyone was satisfied from the governor down. And as long as they kept that going, no one got out of line here. Very little crime during that, when all the criminals were here on vacation. So that's about the way it worked. Now, following this room in the museum, we go into the Capone Gallery.
Okay.
When we had prohibition, as long as you had a prescription, you could get whiskey and beer. And that's what this is. This is a prescription for whiskey and beer. Kind of like marijuana is now, medicinal marijuana. So doctors and pharmacists became real popular. This is a cool picture here. You can't really see it on this picture because this picture's blown up. But this is Al and Sonny in Happy Hollow at the end of Fountain Street here, and it says to M, which is Mafalda, his sister, from the big fella, Happy Hollow. That's what's written there on the smaller picture. It just kind of disintegrated when it was up there. But that's kind of his close allies there, Jake Goosig, Nitty, and his driver. This is a great picture. There is one other great picture of Capone that very few people see. And of course, here's really his nemesis. You know, the Untouchables were really accountants to begin with.
Yeah.
And Ness was one of them. And in 1908, when, you know, they decided to form a Bureau of Investigation, Hoover actually worked for the Bureau of Investigation. And when McKinley got assassinated and Teddy Roosevelt took over, he appointed Hoover to become the head of what was going to be now the FBI after Frank Nash got arrested here, taken to Kansas City, and became victim of the Kansas City Massacre. The guy who was Attorney General for Teddy Roosevelt was none other than Charles Bonaparte, Napoleon Bonaparte's great nephew. And he said if Hoover wanted the FBI to really learn how to shoot, they'd do live shooting drills at each other. But Teddy scratched that. But and something interesting here is that Al's oldest brother, Ralph, was right above him, and above Ralph was Frank, and he became a revenuer and worked for the revenuers in Kansas and became an Indian agent, and was known as Two Gun Hart back then. But it's just kind of fascinating. Capone, pretty interesting story. Here's his car over here that we let's see where they put that. Oh yeah, where he had in the Arlington lobby for a while. Clinton Buick, Bill Clinton's uncle.
Oh, yeah.
Owned the Buick.
That's right. I see that now. Yeah.
Francisco Castiglia, or Frank Costello, as everybody knows him, loved Hot Springs, and you know, he had been introduced early on with Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano and Ben Siegel. He liked it so much he bought the jack tar, and one of the longest runs of the mineral water was over to the jack tar on the other side of Hot Springs Mountain. He lobbied the government to do it, and they did it. And the jack tar is now a senior citizen home over there, and they have the hot thermal water over there. But, you know, slot machines were his big deal. He wasn't into killing people, because he had this guy to do that. And this guy, not somebody you want to see at your door in the morning, he wanted to move here. That's what this article is about. He wanted to retire here like everybody else. Madden and Costello wanted to retire here. Everybody wanted to retire here, but you know, the governors just frowned down upon it, wouldn't let them. And I'm not sure really whether Madden wanted them here either, because they just brought more federality to the place. And one thing about these big time mob guys, except for Gotti and the ones that were flamboyant, they were a lot better off if they were low.
Yeah.
And Madden was low, and he liked it low. But here's a chart here, a generation chart. These are kind of most of the people that they were watching here. But Frank Costello came here as late as 1980. Madden died in 65. And, you know, he just absolutely loved the place. There was a lot to do, and he felt safe here because he owned a restaurant, the Villanova. There's a picture of that right there. And Guy Rasso owned that, who had cooked for him in New York. He wanted to move down here, did Guy Rasso. So when he moved down here, Frank got involved and said, you know, why don't you let me help you get started down there, and that'll be a place we can eat. We feel safe to eat there, because nobody really got shot here. I guess somebody could have got poisoned here, but nope, nothing really ever happened. So anyway, that's where Costello and a lot of the guys would eat there. But at the same time, they ate at the Arlington a lot. Mickey Cohen writes about eating spaghetti in the Arlington, and they used to have great meetings there.
And the Arlington still is a working
Arlington is
hotel.
still here, opened in
I
1924.
think
The New York
my son
Times
and
said
I
it was a
stayed
modern miracle of
And then they have
construction.
a golf course connected to it, or a
Yeah,
deal with
country
the
club.
And we played
The
at
people,
the Arlington.
right?
Arlington
The people that
Country
own
Club.
the country club, or the people that own the Arlington, own the country club.
Yeah.
It's not that way anymore. It just changed about 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
though. The members own, and the family that own the Arlington own the country club now, and a fellow from San Antonio, Texas, Al Rajabi, owns the Arlington, or a corporation actually owns it.
Yeah.
So, but it's a cool story, and of course there's more to the museum, so I invite
Yeah.
everybody that's listening to come down. It's just so fascinating, the history here, when we got Babe Ruth, Al Capone, and Franklin Roosevelt, and Andrew Carnegie, all sitting in the Arlington smoking cigars, reading a racing form and drinking together. You know, it's just, how bizarre is that? It was a real resort for everybody. I mean, you could have a guy who made $1 a month sitting with a guy who either stole or made
Yeah.
$50,000 a month in 1930. You know.
Robert, that's one thing I've noticed in my research on these guys. In the 30s and 40s and even the early 50s, the politicians, the movie stars, and the gangsters, they didn't mind frequenting around each other.
No.
Nobody would do anything like that today.
No.
But back then,
They just hung out with each other.
Yeah.
And you know, when they played golf, I mean, there's of course a lot of stories here. I mean, I interviewed one of my podcasts on TGMOA After Dark is a guy who caddied. His dad was a hotel detective at the Arlington.
Oh, really?
He caddied a lot for Ralph Capone. He tells some great stories what the other caddies told him about Al playing golf.
So that's the Gangster Museum
Of America.
Of America
After Dark.
After Dark.
Yeah.
TGMOF.
TGMOA After Dark.
After Dark.
On Apple. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And all the other podcast apps.
Oh, yeah,
sure.
there's a lot of other
All right.
podcasts
Well,
there.
folks, look for that one.
All right.